Coach Kawahara here, and I'm coming to you from the hotel weight room in the Radisson, Toronto. I'm here for the Blue Jays Academy Coaches Clinic, and we got to talking today about some dynamic warm-ups, and I was talking to one of the other coaches who's attending the clinic about some of the T-spine mobility work that we do for the thoracic spine or the upper back to help our throwers, and especially to help our throwers be able to generate a little bit better separation between their lower body and their upper body, which really helps with power production. And especially from a throwing standpoint, it makes sure that our arm doesn't drag. A lack of thoracic or T-spine mobility can really cause the arm to drag through release and puts a lot of stress on the anterior part of the shoulder. So there's three major T-spine mobility movements that we use. And the first, we start in a quadruped position. So we would just start with our knees underneath our hips, our hands underneath our shoulders. And all we do, just to try to improve this movement a little bit, is we just rock our hips back towards our heels. Okay, still keeping a neutral spine, so trying to keep my back nice and flat. I'm going to get into this position, locking one hand onto the ground. My other hand's going to go to my ear. I'm going to reach kind of underneath my opposite elbow, and then as I come up, I'm just going to follow my elbow with my eyes and try to rotate my elbow and point it right to the roof. Again, we want to keep our back, our spine nice and neutral, back nice and flat. And this range of motion is all through our upper back. As we do that, we would do 10 to 12 on each arm, obviously. Then we're just going to move to what we call a half kneeling position. So half kneeling means my front leg's going to be at 90 degrees. My back knee's going to be on the ground at 90 degrees. And we do a half kneeling series. So what we actually do is we pair it with a hip flexor stretch. So what I'll do is, if my right knee is down on the ground, I'm going to put my right arm up. All I'm going to do is I'm going to push my hips down and forward. Standard hip flexor stretch here. Okay, now as I come back to neutral, I'm going to reset, so I'm in that 90-90 position, half kneeling. Both of my hands now are going to go up. Again, keeping that neutral spine and my chin back. Now I'm going to rotate from my thoracic spine, my upper back, and then reset. Again, we do this as a series, so again we would do between 8 and 12 per side. When I go here, I'm going to make sure that I go hip flexor stretch, reset back in the middle, both hands up, T-spine rotation, back, and then rep number 2 would be hip flexor stretch, and then back into that T-spine rotation. And by pairing the two together, I find that technically we have a chance to reset our posture in between. If we were just to go through 10 to 12 rotations, each one tends to look a little bit more sloppy as we go. So just adding in that hip flexor stretch where they reset their posture again tends to really help them focus on making sure that their alignment is good. A couple teaching points here as we're cueing. Make sure that the knee that's up is going to stay straight, my hips locked in. So we don't want, as we're rotating, we don't want our athletes to be rolling open on that front leg. So this is going to stay solid, hips, front knee is going to stay neutral. And now as I rotate, a lot of the athletes are going to try to think, they're going to trick themselves into thinking that their rotation and their mobility through their T-spine is really good. I cue my athletes to make sure they keep their hands right above their ears. As I rotate, my eyes are going to follow, and if my hands stay above my ears, then I know that rotation is going to come from my thoracic spine. The third one, we're just going to progress to a standing position, and I'm just going to be in a spot where I would do a bent over row. Back's going to be nice and flat, a little bit of flex in the knees. Both hands are going to be down forward, just underneath the middle of my chest. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my thumbs will be pointing out. I'm just going to rotate through. Again, my eyes will follow my hand, and my hand's going to end up pointing right up towards the roof. Okay, hips again are going to stay locked. And try to get as little rotation through the lumbar spine, through our hips as we can. Really try to focus on developing that mobility through the thoracic spine. So that's a progression that we go through. Just 3 really simple exercises. The first one being in a full 2-leg kneeling position. Really helps make sure that we can keep our hips very stable and we don't get rotation through the lumbar. All that rotation is going to come through the upper back. Then we can go into that half kneeling position, and then finally into a standing position where they're going to stabilize their lower body and then rotate through their thoracic spine. Very easy, simple progression there to generate some T-spine mobility. Let your athletes kind of cue themselves into getting that separation between their upper and lower body. Keeps arms a lot healthier, and will also help with their power production, whether you're throwing or hitting.